Game week 32 proved to be one of the best game weeks of the season so far for my team, and with 2 free transfers going into game week 33, it's time to get myself into that top 10k. We'll be discussing my priority transfers with a plan of getting the double game week 34 players. As always, make sure you drop a like on the video, aim for 200, and of course, smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, a super quick review on my Game Week 32 team, because as I mentioned, it was one of the best of the season. Ended up getting a Game Week rank of around 200k, 82 points, and of course, I rolled the transfer. So whenever things like that happen, you know you've had a brilliant week. It meant that I had a significant green arrow from around 59k to 32,000. So the dream of a top 10k finish is on the cards. Just quickly going through the players. The defense finally smashed it. Dubravka with a clean sheet. I cannot believe he actually kept a clean sheet. It felt like it was never going to happen. The defenders, of course, Arsenal kept a double clean sheet. They are just monsters at the back. And Pedro Porro rewarding me for the loyalty that I have served with him for the last 15 game weeks. An 11-pointer was a welcome return for this team, and the real difference between what would have been a small green arrow and a really significant one. In terms of the midfielders, it was all about captaincy this game week, and there wasn't really any standout options, but thankfully we got the right one on Mo Salah. They all did return, but Mo Salah was the one who did deliver with the 16 points with the armband. Son with the 5-pointer, but could have been so much more if it wasn't for the goalkeeper. Saka, never really considered him because of the injury doubts, but he did step up with that 10-pointer and really show him why he is still probably the best Arsenal attacker in that team from a fantasy perspective. And Cole Palmer with that 5-pointer. Chelsea just so unpredictable, making it very difficult to put captaincy on a player like that. In terms of the front three, Haaland with the 8-pointer, could have been a little bit more, to be honest with you. Darwin Núñez felt very fortunate to get those 5 points. I don't really enjoy owning him. And Dominic Solanke being disappointing over the last few weeks with a 2-pointer, but he still has that double game week in 34, and we know he has guaranteed game time, so he would be a difficult sell. So 82 points, rolled the transfer. Now I have 2 going into game week 33. Let me show you the players that I deem absolutely essential for the foreseeable future, and then of course the players I'm targeting. So going into game week 33, it's really important as a manager right now to have an understanding on exactly what you are doing with your chip strategy, because this will dictate what kind of time horizon you are looking at. So for my team, I will be 100% wildcarding in game week 35 to target, of course, the double game week 35 and prepare my team for a bench boost in game week 37. And with that strategy, it means that I'm only looking at a 2 game week horizon, game week 33, and of course, the double game week 34. And realistically, and we will look at it in a minute, those teams that double in game week 34 are going to be the priority transfers. Now, looking at my team currently, I've highlighted the players that I'm not considering selling at all. The double Arsenal defence. Would I like a second Arsenal attacker? Potentially. Odegaard, Havertz would be some really nice differentials. But when this Arsenal defence are just looking so elite right now, it would be a crazy person to sell and move away from double Arsenal defence. So they are locked in until I wildcard 100%. But as you can see, both goalkeepers, I'm more than happy to sell at some point if I can. And Pedro Porro is not a locked player at all, mainly because, of course, they blank in game week 34. But we'll come on to those fixtures in a minute. In terms of the midfielders, Mo Salah locked in, been very disappointing recently, but he still doubles, guaranteed game time, and on penalties, you're never selling Mo Salah. And of course, Bukayo Saka, who doubles in game week 34. So more than happy with those, but Son is not a lock in this team because he blanks in game week 34. Cole Palmer isn't a lock either, with a tricky fixture away against Arsenal in game week 34. And Garnacho, a brilliant home game in game week 34, but again, not a locked player in my team. In terms of the forwards, Darwin Núñez, hate owning him, but I can't really afford to sell him with this double coming up, and the same applies to Dominic Solanke. So as you can see, the players that I take into equation for locked in, and with 2 free transfers available, and then 1 additional in game week 34 before a wildcard, there's only a few actual options that I can do. A goalkeeper transfer at some point, 1 defender transfer, an optimal midfielder or an optimal forward. That is really the only direction I can take this team. So let's take a look at basically the teams we need to target and importantly, the players. So taking a look at the fixtures coming up for Game Week 33 and Game Week 34, I have taken out a lot of teams that are just redundant in this equation. Players from Burnley, for example, all of those players, they're just not getting bought before I wildcard. So I've only put the teams of interest here. And a reminder, my chip strategy is to wildcard in Game Week 35 and bench boost in Game Week 37. Now, a point that I firstly made here is that Spurs assets need to be sold in Game Week 33 or Game Week 34. Now, what I want to say is this. Game Week 35 wildcarders are 100% going to have Chelsea and Spurs assets because they double in Game Week 35 and they will have another double game week in either 36 or in 37. So just tread carefully. If you are selling your Spurs assets and your Chelsea assets, check how much value you've accumulated in those players. For example, I think a lot of people, including myself, bought Cole Palmer at 4.9 million and he is now nearly 6 million. If you are going to sell him to accommodate a double game week player, just be cautious because you're then going to buy him back in Game Week 35 wildcard at a much more expensive price after selling him. If you can avoid selling someone like a Cole Palmer, I would advise doing so. In terms of Pedro Porro and Son for my teams, I am intending to sell them just because Pedro Porro away against Newcastle is not an ideal fixture and he blanks in 34. Son, another different kind of equation because I think he's actually great for Game Week 33, but then because he is so expensive, he's a good player to sell in 34 to give me options to go elsewhere in the midfield. So Spurs-wise, 33 you can definitely sell, but I don't think it's a priority for attacking assets against this Newcastle defence. Looking at the rest of the teams, we're just going to forget about Sheffield United. There's no world where I'm buying a Sheffield United player. I'm already tripled up on Arsenal, but for those that are maybe not, I do think you need to get yourself a triple up because 33 is great and the 34 double is also equally good. Palace. Don't really think the entry point is this game week unless you're doing as part of a transfer combination. Maybe Mateta's coming in to free up funds and you bench him. Otherwise, I don't think we really look at Palace players until that game week 34 double and then we wildcard them out of our teams. Everton, I think the time to get the defensive players was last week, funny enough, but Chelsea are just such an unpredictable team. They could either destroy Everton or Everton put up a resolute performance and beat them 1-0. I still don't mind a defensive asset. I do not actually think there are any attacking options that I would consider. The idea of bringing in Dwight McNeil is just not an idea. Wolves, great investment from now on in. I will cover off some of the best players in a minute in terms of defenders and midfielders, and they are on my radar as I own no Wolves players right now. Liverpool's a really interesting one. A lot of people like myself have double with Salah and Darwin Núñez. And of course, tripling up on them, it just makes a lot of sense for it. But it's all about where to go. We don't really know the situation with the goalkeepers. We don't really know whether we want to invest in the defence because they're still quite ropey defensively. And we will talk about the best options in a minute. And attacking wise, with the return of certain players, it makes others rotation risks. So there will be a third Liverpool player in my team, but which direction I go in, I feel is quite important for the outcome. Bournemouth, I have my double up. I don't really want any more on that. Brentford, very difficult to invest in when other teams double. And again, Man United, I've left them in there because I currently own Garnacho. And he's an interesting one because of all the single game week players, I don't actually mind playing him in 34 if I need to. City, great fixtures, but again, can't really be going there when they have Real Madrid tomorrow, Real Madrid in between Luton and Brighton. So that's a cover off of the teams that we're definitely targeting. Let's get a bit more specific now with the players to buy. So first up, as I mentioned, defender transfer is inevitably going to happen for my team, most likely in game week 33. Yes, a goalkeeper transfer should be made, but there's just no priority goalkeepers out there with only 0.2 million in the bank. I literally can't afford any goalkeeper upgrade. So defensive transfer is definitely a priority. As we saw my team, Pedro Porro away against Newcastle just isn't really ideal, even though he did get 11 pointer. I just don't really back the Spurs defense at all. So I think a defensive transfer is needed, and I've covered off a few here. So first at Wolves, Aït-Nouri by far and away is the best Wolves asset to go to. I think to the extent where if you're not buying Aït-Nouri, you then just avoid Wolves in general. The double, as we've spoken about, is tricky, but Bournemouth being in there, I think, is a good fixture for especially an attacking fullback like Aït-Nouri. The big problem is, of course, he's currently yellow flagged in the game. So we have a bit of time now to get a bit of an understanding whether it is a bad injury or whether he is available for game week 33. If he is, I think this one makes a lot of sense for the team. It's an okay fixture away against Nottingham Forest, and then he has a double. But what we do need to take into account is he isn't always going to be playing in that front three. Once the likes of Hwang returns to the team and a fully fit Cunha, he will then regress back to either a left back or a left wing back. Still makes him a great option, but don't be expecting to see him always popping up in that final third as a central forward, as we have seen. But Aït-Nouri, if he is pass fit, I do think ticks pretty much every box as a defender. Now, looking at Liverpool, this is the really difficult one because, as I mentioned, I don't even know if I want to invest in the Liverpool defence. However, the fixtures are good. And in terms of Van Dijk, he is the safest pick. But for my team, if I was to only do one free transfer this week, I can't actually afford him. So it's very difficult with these sort of game weeks where you have 2 free transfers because you could, for example, downgrade Son to a cheap midfielder and then upgrade Pedro Porro to Van Dijk. But you're bringing in Van Dijk for this week, but then selling such an important player like Son. And I don't really think that makes a lot of value for my team in this game week. So Van Dijk is definitely the safest. Bradley is the budget enabler. And if we did get a situation where Trent has had a setback and he's now out for a few more weeks, he is the obvious move to go for. I prefer him over Konate because Konate's minutes are incredibly hard to predict. But Bradley, at the current timescale of Trent, is a risk for double game week 34, meaning I'm just not going to consider him as an FPL option. Moving to Everton, I just can't really get excited about bringing in someone like Braithwaite, but at a value perspective, 4.3 million, he is a good enabler. And we might get lucky with that Nottingham Forest game being at home, maybe a tight affair where Everton can keep a clean sheet. But when we're looking at defenders to bring in, I want to look at ones that have the clean sheet potential, but also attacking potential. And Braithwaite doesn't really tick those boxes, so he is really low on the list. And last up, Crystal Palace. Again, we've spoken about times to buy players. Palace players this week is just not the time to do so, especially a defender. Away against Liverpool, but then a really nice double game week. My preference is probably Munoz, but again, very little information on him, but he does have a bit of an attacking upside to his gameplay and as a wing back at times. So to conclude on the defenders, as I mentioned, it's really important to understand what players you are selling in certain game weeks. I can get Van Dijk in my team, but it would be at the expense of selling someone like Son away against Newcastle, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So if we get confirmation that Aït-Nouri is then available, I think doing Pedro Porro to Aït-Nouri and accepting that while it isn't great, it is an attacking fullback in a good Wolves team probably makes a lot of sense. But if we were to get information that maybe Trent's out for a few more weeks, Bradley then becomes on the cards. Moving into the midfielders, and again, we're looking at these teams at double. I think there is real value in maybe going for a Phil Foden, for example. I 100% think that is a great pick, but for somebody like myself, I just love bringing in a player that has the potential of playing an additional game, and that's the big thing as well when we're considering these options. If you are going to be bringing in a double game week player, I don't really like bringing in those players that are risky, because all of a sudden, if I bring in somebody who is a rotation risk, they might play in game week 33, miss the first game of 34, and then play the second game of 34. All of a sudden, what it could be potentially 3 games, they only play 2, and there are very few midfielders out there that are better than Phil Foden. So then it just begs the question, why don't you just buy Phil Foden? So it's really important to bring in players that do offer you guaranteed game time. So at least if you don't get the attacking returns, you're at least giving yourself the highest possibility with this player playing 90 minutes. And that's my first big concern about the best Wolves option right now. Sarabia on penalties as we speak, a goal and an assist in the last 2 games. However, I am a little bit concerned about his minutes. I do expect him to start in the Wolves team, but he has been an early substitute in the last few weeks. Do I have absolute certainty on Sarabia? No, but from an underlying stats perspective, he is a really good option. And again, when we're playing FPL, sometimes you need to look at it and think, does this player excite me? And unfortunately, someone like Sarabia just doesn't really do it for my team. So I think he does tick a box where I could bring in a midfielder this week. But to be honest with you, spoiler alert, I'm not really looking to bring in a midfielder this week just because my midfielders are so good. This would be a transfer for game week 34. And while he does have 2 home games, one of those Arsenal, and just looking at the way Arsenal defend, I just don't really see much upside from Sarabia. Now, looking at Liverpool, when we're talking about upside, this is the team to target. As I said, I'm not really looking to bring in a midfielder for game week 33. It would just be in game week 34 in isolation. And away against Fulham and away against Everton, I'm not expecting them to pump the teams, but I equally expect maybe 4 goals over the 2 games. Diaz, 2 goals in the last 3. He is a little bit of a minutes risk. If we do get Diogo Jota return, we can see a situation where Salah plays right wing, Darwin Núñez left, and Jota down the middle. That is my one concern, but I do like what I'm seeing from Diaz, even though he is a frustrating player. If I want guaranteed minutes, the answer is McAllister. If we do see Endo continue as that single pivot with Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones alongside McAllister, then I really do think that he maybe gets the pick over a Luis Diaz. He's going to play every single minute in the team. If for some reason Salah misses out, he is the next penalty taker, and his attacking stats have actually been really good when he's been deployed as this number 10 in the Liverpool system. And I do think after seeing that Man United game, Klopp will want to get back to McAllister being in those final phases with those short passes and opportunities around the box. So I think McAllister is a brilliant option, and I actually fancy him over Luis Diaz right now. Last up, Crystal Palace. These are the ones that really do excite me. Again, not looking for game week 33, and that's quite ideal because away against Liverpool is not a great fixture. However, the double in game week 34 is great at home against West Ham and at home against Newcastle, who are really struggling. I don't see a situation where I don't go without a Crystal Palace midfielder. I just think under the new manager, they even impressed me against Man City from an attacking perspective. This isn't the Roy Hodgson stale Palace team, so I'm excited about the assets. Realistically, Eze is the pick. Guaranteed minutes, penalty taker in this team. But whenever Elise is on the field for Palace, he just excites me. You just know he has that double-digit haul in him. He's got that arrogance about him where he'd bang in a free kick. He's on set pieces. So I would need to see a lot from Elise in game week 33 to give me some confidence that he is back fully fit, because he has been out for a long term. And realistically, based on what I said, I'm not going to take that punt on Elise. But if somebody does, he could be the ultimate differential. But with Eze only being 3% owned, I think that's enough of an ownership to go for him, knowing you're getting differential points and a brilliant double game week. So to conclude, of all the midfielders, based on my strategy of buying in game week 34, it's going to be Eze or it's going to be McAllister as the picks. Right then, doing a full circle back to my game week 33 team, this is how it is looking with the 2 free transfers available, 0.2 million in the bank. And I'm just going to quickly rattle through a conclusion on this team. So goalkeeper is a disaster, even though Dubravka did keep a clean sheet. If we get news that Areola is fit, he will come in for Dubravka, and I'll hope West Ham can keep out this Fulham team, who are pretty awful away from home. So that could be a huge turning point in this game week. Because I only have 0.2 million in the bank, there is no goalkeeper transfer that I'm considering for this week. So goalkeeper transfer is off the cards. Moving into the defenders, double Arsenal defence against any team right now, I am delighted with. So they are guaranteed in. We've spoken about Porro. The 11-pointer, amazing, but Spurs still concede goals. And away against Newcastle, even though Newcastle are not good themselves, I always back them from an attacking perspective at St. James's Park. So Porro, you've done me proud with the 11-pointer, but I do think selling him is the right move. And when we look at the rest of the team, as I mentioned, that starting 7, I can't bring myself to selling any of them. As we said, realistically, Son would be the cash cow to downgrade to then enable me to bring in a better defender, pricier than Porro, like a Virgil van Dijk. But selling Son to downgrade to maybe like an Eze, who I've spoken about I want, to then upgrade Porro to a Virgil van Dijk just doesn't really make a lot of sense for my team. And I also like having the luxury of having that 3rd Liverpool spot available in game week 34 to take that punt, whether it be a defender or whether it be, not a defender, whether it be McAllister or Luis Diaz. So Porro down to a cheaper defender is the way I want to go, but it's going to be completely dependent on whether Aït-Nouri is past fit. So that is really important. But as I said, the rest of the team I'm really happy with. I feel like it's a week early to be selling Son, and it makes no sense to sell any of the other players. So this is locked in pretty much. I think Porro to Aït-Nouri as long as he's fit. But what I want to quickly do is just show you what my team will look like for 33 and for 34, just to give you a bit of a clearer picture. Okay, so here is my team for game week 33. As always, I am using the Fantasy Football Fix Google Chrome extension FPL Plus. It's by far and away the best planner in the game. So here is my team. If we were to get confirmation that Aït-Nouri is going to be available, because I have 2 free transfers, I need to use one of them. And Porro just feels like the sacrificial lamb in this team. As I've spoken about profusely, I just don't feel comfortable selling Son right now away against this Newcastle defence. Yes, it would free up the funds to bring in someone like a Virgil van Dijk, but I just don't think it is worthwhile. So Aït-Nouri coming into the team makes a lot of sense. I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet against Nottingham Forest, but he's a good player to have in preparation for double game week 34. So my team would look something like this, and I would roll my second transfer going into game week 34, which would look like this. Now, a reminder, I actually do have a double game week player in Zabarnyi, but away against a free scoring Aston Villa team and away against Wolves, I just don't really like it. So there is a chance that I would actually keep him on the bench. Now, Garnacho would start over Cole Palmer. Yes, Chelsea have done well against the big teams, but I just don't really feel that confident playing Cole Palmer in this double game week. I feel more potential starting Garnacho. But remember, I do have 2 free transfers available in this team. So the first move would be trying to get a Palace player in. I think that is really, really important for this team. So selling Son, as I spoke about, I don't want to sell Cole Palmer because he has a fixture if I need to call upon him, and I've accumulated so much value in him. Wildcard in a game week 35, I need him, and he'd cost a lot more. So selling Son for inevitably Eze is going to be on the cards. And my team starts to look a little bit like this. Now, with one more transfer available, it's all about where can I maximise the full pick. I could do a goalkeeper move. If Alisson, for example, is confirmed fit, I could do Dubravka to Alisson and get myself a double goalkeeper. But also, I don't feel that excited by it. Next move that I could do is maybe sell someone like Garnacho and bring in a McAllister. Again, it gives me guaranteed minutes. Does it give me pure excitement? Probably not, but I do like that move. And in terms of the forwards, Haaland out is a possibility. However, selling Haaland to a forward that doubles is really not something that I like. I already have the Liverpool coverage in Darwin Núñez. Crystal Palace's Mateta could be a consideration, but it just feels wrong saying that out loud, doing Haaland to Mateta. So I think I'd be more confident maybe selling Garnacho, even though he is at home against Sheffield United, and bringing in somebody like a McAllister with the hope that he does play as that number 10 in that system. All of a sudden, my team has quite a lot of coverage from a double game week perspective. I am currently benching Zabarnyi, but if I do get tempted, I could possibly bring him in. And I would have a single game week goalkeeper. I could take a -4 if I really want to. Maybe do that move of Dubravka to a goalkeeper who I think could actually keep a clean sheet. But I think there's going to be few and far between clean sheets. So that is roughly my transfer plan between now and game week 34. Of course, I would then wildcard in game week 35. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but I feel quite confident on these moves. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 33 transfer plan. Really hope it is providing some value to you guys. As always, if you did enjoy it, make sure you do drop a like and smash that subscribe button on the channel. I'll be back with plenty of videos this week, so I'll see you very soon. Have an amazing day. Cheers.